And we're here with Frankly Speaking Live, and I'm your host, Frank Holzhauser, and my guest in studio is David Kaniuk.
How goes it, Frank?
Good. How was your week?
Well, as I was telling you when I came in, I've been kind of in a mental fog all week. I don't know if it's the weather or what's going on here, but there's no better way to snap yourself out of a mental fog than literally running into a glass door. And
That'll do it.
That'll wake you up in a heartbeat.
Well, as always, if you would like to join the show for out-of-town callers, we would like to have you call toll-free at 855-244-0077. And if you call locally, 244-0077. So I'm going to get started this week, and I'd like to start out talking about our favorite IRS gal, none other than Lois Lane Lerner.
When is the Lois Lerner calendar coming out?
Well, I don't know.
Man, I'd be into that.
I'm looking forward to the 12 months of layouts. Maybe they'll have the 12 months in the jail cell.
Yeah, she pleads the fifth on every picture.
Oh, I'm just livid on this story, but I put a post on Facebook this week, and as many of you know, we started a Hypocrite of the Week segment at the end of our shows, and this Lois Lerner scandal will also include my Hypocrite of the Week vote for this week.
Oh, wow. Right
so
off the bat.
it's a twofold message, so hang in there to the end of the show. I start out by saying, well, Lois Lerner pleaded the fifth again today. What was this, Wednesday? I think it was so. Wednesday. Was the hearings. Lois Lerner pleaded the fifth again today in a congressional hearing. Give this fool immunity to spill her guts or hold her in contempt. But I am so sick I could puke of the attitude of Elijah Cummings and like-minded liberals who will say there's no evidence that this does not tie to the White House. Well, how in the heck would you know until Lerner testifies? Until now, this has all been blamed on a rogue monster agent in the Cincinnati office. Now, if you was to open any yearbook, any 1970s yearbook, which would have been my era going to school, and you pan through and look at any girl in the 1970s, this is what this Cincinnati official looks like, is a teenage girl out of the 1970s yearbook.
Yeah.
And this is what this, this Cincinnati rogue agent resembles. Now, the left media just ain't got the time, what with the Chris Christie, Bridgegate and all. But again, no one knows if there's a smidgen of evidence because Doug Shulman or Lois Lerner have not yet been put under oath. You see, the BS that passes for news in this country, while all of Obama's scandals go unnoticed. Put this woman in jail for contempt until she sings like a bird.
Well, why hasn't she been put in contempt? Why hasn't she been put in jail for contempt, I should say?
Well, the sense that I'm getting from the story is there are some people in the Congress that feels like on that first hearing that she come in and made a semi-speech and then waived the fifth. So they think she waived her right to the fifth. So I think they're wanting to get her to testify without immunity. But at this point, give this woman immunity. I mean, because in other words, if she does know something, I suppose they don't want her to come in and just give some trivial testimony and walk. That's why I think they're eventually going to have to give her immunity, because I think there's some that would like to prosecute her.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that's throwing me off is why aren't they being more aggressive in going after not just her, but the Obama administration as a whole?
Well, the Obama administration, they want to keep it quiet.
Well, obviously, yeah. But why isn't the Republican leadership harping on this? I mean, this should be banging the drum as loudly as possible. They should be doing this.
Well, and then I go on to say in a comment, and it is an enigma to me why many of the fool Democrats remain silent on this. Do you long for the day that a Republican POTUS uses the power of the IRS, armed not only with the power of the IRS, but now potentially your medical records?
Right.
Do you, as a Democrat, want that to happen in an effort to try to silence your exercise of free speech? Pardon me, easy for me to say. Think about that. Obama won't be there forever, and a Republican will hold that office again, and paybacks, as they say, are...
a Lois Lerner.
Yes.
Well, here's the ironic part about Lois Lerner taking the Fifth Amendment. Every time that you sign your 1040 tax return, you do so under penalty of prosecution. If anything is falsified or incorrect on that form, you're subject to prosecution by the IRS. So in essence, when you sign that 1040 form, you're waiving your own Fifth Amendment, or you're signing away your Fifth Amendment, basically. You're not able to invoke the Fifth Amendment.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's always rules for the normal man, and then there's a different set of rules for Congress. Exactly. I mean, it's the same thing with now. For example, you can go back on your tax records 3 years, and for further refund. But now they can come back on you for 7 years. So
Right. And if you're someone like Tim Geithner or someone like that, you don't even have to pay taxes.
Yeah, well, I that pesky paperwork, I misplaced it.
It's so hard to find. I had trouble downloading the PDF file.
So as I mentioned, stay tuned to the end of the show because that Lois Lerner will involve my Hypocrite of the Week. But I'll move on now to another thing that's been a little perturbing in the news. And that's none other than the black spokesperson, Spike Lee. Have you heard, did you get a chance to hear Spike in the news this week?
I vaguely remember that a couple of weeks ago, but I can't remember exactly what he said.
Well, I'll read the post that I put on here. I put, you've undoubtedly heard the term white flight. This has been blamed for the fall of the inner cities into poverty, decay, and ruin. Now none other than Spike, the black spokesperson Lee, is peeing and moaning about white flight again, but this time it's flight back to the inner cities. Seems that he begrudges the fact that the folks infusing the cash want to make the rules. So now, in other words, since the money's coming back into the inner cities, the people who's infusing the cash is the ones that wanting to change things, and that's not going along with Spike. That's not going well with him. And I go on to say, anyone remember Spike's claim to fame movie, Do the Right Thing? This is a movie where Spike's character took delight in the burning of the neighborhood's pizza parlor because the owner, Sal, was such a pompous guy that he actually told Lee's character in the movie that if you wanted more black folk on Sal's wall of fame, get your own business. Sal had, I suppose, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, those type of people, Joe DiMaggio, these kind of people on his wall of fame. And Spike was just a delivery boy in the movie, but he was irked that Sal didn't have more blacks on his wall. And Sal retorted to him, well, get your own business if you want somebody on your wall. So Sal was saying, you new folk don't get to make the rules. So this so angered delivery boy Spike that he rallied and cheered the fire. Just goes to show you can't make some blacks happy. They're mad you move out, they're mad you move in. Well, Spike has fled the hood, so what the heck does it matter anyway? He right. seems to be just a sawed-off twerp that's trying to stay relevant.
Right, and that reminds me of a story that we covered, I think, in our first week, where in a black community, I want to say that was around Detroit. Maybe not. I guess that doesn't matter. But there was a black community. They were upset about a Trader Joe's moving in because of the clientele that would bring in. The thought that immediately came to mind when you were going through the synopsis of that scene of the movie was the power base of these leaders. Their power base is built upon the perpetual poverty of others.
Yeah.
They have to keep these people in poverty. Otherwise, they have nothing to complain about. They have no basis for staying in power on top of these other people. In essence, they are keeping their own people in debt slavery.
Well, I would suggest to you that the Democratic Party has to have this permanent underclass to have a base for votes.
Right. No, that's exactly right.
I mean, if you go through the statistics of what poverty started out under LBJ,
mm-hmm.
and you compare those statistics to today, there's no real drop in poverty.
And that was
in fact, you know.
That was the whole point of starting the Great Society. If you go back and listen to those Lyndon Johnson tapes, it was to ensure that the minority vote would be voting Democratic for the next 200 years, as he's put it.
Well, I just find that, you know, there's too many people making money on racism.
Right. Racism is big business.
Race baiting, race merchants, whatever you want to call it. Racism is never going to go away because there's some people so vested in it, it'll never go away. It can't.
Right. It's like it's a wound, and they continuously are picking at that wound, so it's not able to scab over or heal. It just keeps oozing out.
Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know anybody that's a spokesman for my race. I'm of German descent, and I don't know anybody that's a spokesman for me. And I would just advocate to everybody, I don't care who you are, black or white, speak for yourself. Stand up and be heard, and don't allow Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, or Spike Lee to represent your feelings.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay, we're in total agreement on that.
Ding!
Ding!
Next subject.
Okay, so you was wanting to talk about some of the things going on in the Ukraine this week, or did you have something else that you was wanting to hit on first?
No, we can go to Ukraine.
Well, I did hear, just as a point of mention, that the Obama administration has sent 6 F-15s to Poland. Wasn't actually to the Ukraine. Sent 6 F-15s to Poland, plus a refueling plane.
That doesn't surprise me.
So we talked a little bit on Ukraine last week. So have you done any further research and found out anything this week that you wanted to touch on?
Just this week, Wednesday was a big day for news. Leaked phone call, Kiev snipers hired by U.S.-backed opposition. Details of a leaked phone call between EU Foreign Affairs Chief Catherine Ashton and Estonian Foreign Affairs Minister Uramas Paet suggest that the U.S.-backed opposition was responsible for hiring snipers who gunned down protesters in Kiev and not the deposed governor of Viktor Yankovic, as the media widely claimed. During the phone call, Paet tells Ashton that evidence presented to him by a doctor who treated victims of the sniper attacks clearly indicated both police and protesters were being shot at by the same people. He said, quote, there is now a stronger and stronger understanding that behind the snipers, it was not Yankovic, but it was somebody from the new coalition, said Paet during the phone call, which was hacked by the security service of Ukraine. And second, what was quite disturbing, this same Olga Bogomolets told us that all the evidence shows that the people who were killed by snipers from both sides among policemen and then people from the streets, that they were the same snipers killing people from both sides, the Estonian FM added. The true narrative, therefore, suggests that forces within the opposition hired the snipers in order to kill protesters and then blame the deaths on Yankovic's administration, thereby delegitimizing his bid to hold on to power.
Okay, we're coming up on our first break, and again, this is Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and we will return to pick up on the Ukraine conversation in a few minutes.
Across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. transformations. Change your life, change your relationships, transform your world.
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device. Your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom! Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hey, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. I want to tell you about our brand new time slot. It's from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's on the same night, Tuesdays. We now follow Ed Fallon and the Fallon Forum on webcast1live.com. I want to tell you a little bit about our show. Our show is focused on local, state, and national, and sometimes international politics. We like to keep people updated and informed. We also have very interesting guests. So please join us every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on webcast1live.com.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. You know, there's an app for that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
And we're back with Frankly Speaking Live. I'm your host, Frank Holzhauser. And before we went to break, David was just getting into his Ukraine story, so we'll let him pick up on where he left off.
All right. So where we left off, a leaked phone call shows that the Kiev snipers were hired by the U.S., basically. They're U.S.-backed opposition. So the point that I wanted to hit on next was that this dovetails into earlier in February, another hacked phone call was leaked in which U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Europe, Victoria Nuland, was caught red-handed plotting with top diplomat Jeffrey Payet to pick Ukraine's future puppet leaders. Nuland specifically approved Arseniy Yatsenyuk, who later became prime minister after the coup.
Easy for you to say.
So basically, yeah, so this is not an organic revolution by people who are demanding democracy. This is a U.S.-backed coup, basically in order to stir up trouble.
So if I'm hearing you right, it's your contention that this is not an accident. This is being stirred up.
Exactly. We're
poking
the hornet's nest.
You don't think this is so much a power play by Putin?
No.
As opposed to...
He's reacting to moves that we are making.
Putin is in a reactionary mode.
Exactly. Putin is in a reactionary mode because of trouble that we're stirring up. This dovetails into a BBC story that the BBC now admits that armed Nazi-led armed neo-Nazi-backed people who are part of this revolution. I'm speaking really well right now.
Okay, well, take your time.
So the story from New Eastern Outlook today, like the West's support of sectarian terrorists across the Middle East, including Al-Qaeda, it has found the most despicable elements in Ukrainian society to lead the revolution for the socio-political reordering of Eastern Europe. As the dust settles, and the West's proxy regime finds itself safely entrenched in Kiev, Ukraine, the Western media can now finally recuperate some of its lost legitimacy after months of denying the obvious, that armed neo-Nazis led the so-called Euromaidan uprising. A BBC Newsnight short titled "Neo-Nazi Threat in New Ukraine" reveals xenophobic, Jew-hating nationalists armed and leading the mobs in Kiev, directly contradicting months of Western media narratives portraying the rabble as aspiring for freedom, democracy, and closer ties with the West, with the most absurd example being the, quote, "I am Ukrainian" propaganda reel. If you remember that was the YouTube video that was released several weeks ago, kind of in the same vein as the Kony 2012 thing that happened.
Well, let me ask you, Obama seems like such an inept leader on the world stage. He seems to have a lot more backbone and spine when it comes to domestic affairs. But on the world stage, he seems kind of like a klutz. Is this an act? Is this
I think it's an inaccurate portrayal by the GOP right-centered media. Not the mainstream media as a whole, but people like Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, people like that, part of the false left-right paradigm. Barack Obama is an actor. He's a globalist actor on a globalist stage, and he's taking his orders and doing what he's told. He's pulling some strings and having his strings pulled from behind the scenes. I don't think Ukraine is going to be the flashpoint. I think it's a diversion, and I think what the flashpoint is going to be for a big conflict is still going to be Syria, and perhaps Israel getting involved in Syria. And actually, there was some tension on the border today. Israel scrambled some jets because Syrian forces were getting close to the border. They were going after some terrorist cells over there.
So what was that all about? I just caught a little bit of that on the news today. Could you get a little more in-depth with that story?
If I can bring that up, I can get more in-depth on that. But the point of this is that this is not an organic revolution in Ukraine. It's not the U.S. trying to foster democracy or anything like that. And big old bad Putin's coming in and trying to squash it because he's a big old Russian bear. That's just not the case. As it is in Syria, this is a U.S.-backed coup, and Putin is just going in to protect his interests and reacting to the moves that we're making.
Well, sadly, I think I was telling you in private, or maybe I said on the show a couple of weeks ago, that it appears to me that Putin seems to be a stronger leader right now, whether you agree or disagree with Putin.
Right.
He seems to be a stronger leader than Obama.
No, I'd agree with that totally.
So ultimately, I guess I would ask ultimately, who's pulling Obama's strings?
That I don't know. I don't have a name or anything like that. I mean, it's a lot of people pulling his strings. There's a globalist cabal in the shadows that is pulling his strings, but I don't have a specific name or anything that I can give you of who's pulling the strings. I will say that also this week, Obama illegally ordered sanctions against Russia. He circumvented Congress on placing sanctions and just did it with stroke of the pen and a telephone call.
Well, yes, he's got that pen and telephone.
That's right. Obama ordered sanctions on those responsible for Moscow's military intervention in Ukraine, including bans on travel to the United States and freezing of their U.S. assets. He echoed European Union leaders and the pro-Western government in Ukraine in declaring that the proposed referendum would violate international law. And the sudden acceleration of moves to bring Crimea, which is an ethnic Russian majority and has effectively been seized by Russian forces, formerly under Moscow's rule, came as EU leaders held an emergency summit, groping for ways to pressure Russia back down and accept mediation. And then, let's see. So yeah, he's ordering sanctions against Ukraine.
Did you catch Hillary's comments this week?
About comparing Putin to Hitler?
Well, now, It's very hard for me to watch anything that Hillary has to say with a straight face without hitting the mute button or wanting to throw the remote at the TV. But I did start to see the clip about 4 times, and then on about the 5th time, I actually sit and listen to the clip. Now, does anybody but me, and do you get the sense that she didn't know the name of Crimea until this controversy has hit the news?
You know, I have not seen the clip. It would not surprise me.
Well, in her little clip, she compared, and who was it? Bill O'Reilly and somebody else was touching on it the other night, and they were saying that they actually agreed with. They actually thought she was making a good point. But what do you think about her comparison? Is this further trying to inflame the situation because she's wanting a presidential run eventually in 2016 if the world makes it that long?
It's warmongering rhetoric. It's warmongering drum beating, basically, is what it is, and that dovetails into my hypocritical statement of the week.
Okay, well,
let's save that for the end.
We'll save that one for last.
What I wanted to hit on with the Obama banning critics of Ukrainian coup. Let's see here. So he signs this executive order placing sanctions and also banning critics of the Ukrainian coup from entering the U.S. I've got a story. Under the sweeping language of President Barack Obama's executive order issued today, critics of the U.S.-backed coup in Ukraine could find themselves being banned from entering the United States. The executive order suspends entry into the United States as immigrants or non-immigrants of such persons who fulfill the following criteria. Any persons determined by the Secretary of the Treasury in consultation with the Secretary of State to be responsible for or complicit in or to have engaged in directly or indirectly any of the following actions or policies that undermined the democratic process or institutions in Ukraine. So are they going to ban themselves from entering the U.S.? Really, this seems like a move to ban international journalists from entering the U.S. Anybody who might be critical or telling the truth of what's actually going on.
Certainly a possibility. But Hillary was sitting on stage and she was pontificating. Mm-hmm. And it just dawned on me, she just learned what is it? Crimea. Uh-huh. Something tells me she just learned where that's at. Because I'm guessing most people, including myself, could not point that out on a globe in less than about a minute.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, Obama has a propensity for appointing ministers who don't really know the subjects of the countries to which they're being sent. Ambassadors, I should say.
Well, now this brings up our other favorite dupe, John Kerry. He's over obviously trying to broker some kind of wonderful deal between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and he's trying to bring some peace to the region.
Feverishly trying to broker a deal, and it's really mind-blowing just how hard they're trying to push the Israelis into some sort of peace deal with the Palestinians, considering there really hasn't been a flare-up of violence in the West Bank recently.
It sounds like to me what you're saying is they're trying to do something and then they immediately sabotage their efforts behind the scenes.
I'm not sure how that ties into...
Apparently Netanyahu visited the White House sometime here this week. Mm-hmm. You heard that. And of course, he doesn't say exactly what is on his mind, but you can tell he's very disenchanted with Obama.
No. After his first visit to the White House when he had to come into the service entrance? No, seriously, they made him enter into the service entrance there like a dog.
So how do you think Kerry's efforts is going to pan out in the, do you think he will get any further than Hillary?
I don't know. I really don't. It feels like Netanyahu knows that he's going to sign something and doesn't want to. From a spiritual standpoint, and I know it's not really it's not really politically correct to say it, but I'm going to say it. It really feels like Obama is doing everything he can in an application process to be the Antichrist.
Or to start World War III, the Battle of Armageddon.
Right. I mean, what is this peace deal going to be? And now I think you'll have a pretty good indication of who Obama really is if this is a 7-year peace deal and Netanyahu signs it and you see an earthquake going off in Israel afterwards.
Well, my study of Scripture, obviously, Christ talks about wars and rumors of wars, and this must come to pass before he comes.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to get more worried when they start chanting peace.
Right.
That's what makes me nervous, because as long as there's wars and rumors of wars, the Lord isn't just quite ready to return yet. But I start getting
peace and safety, and there's sudden destruction.
Yes, peace and safety and sudden destruction. So did you have, was that the finish of the Ukraine story? You had something else you was wanting to hit on?
That's the finish of the Ukraine story for right now until we get to the hypocrite of the week.
Okay, so we're headed towards our second break, and this is Frankly Speaking with your host, Frank Holzhauser. And we will be back in a few minutes, and I think we will pick up and talk about in the days of Noah, but we'll be back soon.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
And we're back with Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and our studio guest, David Kaniuk. before we went to the break, I was talking about we was going to touch on the days of Noah, but David wants to hit on a point here first, and we will come to the days of Noah after he's done with his story here.
Well, what it was, I just wanted to elaborate on a point about, we talked about Obama bucking for the Antichrist position, and a couple of things I found.
Is there an application you can put in for that?
Well, I think if you try to start World War III, try to take guns away from your own citizens.
Well, I was wondering where exactly you go to apply for community organizer, and now there may be a place to go to apply for Antichrist.
Or how about a lecturer, a constitutional lecturer, when you haven't had any actual real-world experience? But on February 25th, I saw a story from the Weekly Standard where Obama told his supporters that they were doing God's work, quote unquote. President Obama thanked the group that used to be his re-election campaign, Organizing for Action, in an event tonight in Washington. He said, quote, "The work you are doing is God's work," unquote. That's what he told his supporters.
Now, hang on here a minute. Now, didn't George Bush get in a lot of trouble for evoking the name of Christ and...
Well, what was the quote that he had said?
Well, that God had told him, or he had prayed.
Yeah, God had told him to invade Iraq.
Yeah,
it was okay.
and Democrats are all over that. Liberals are all over that. Now Obama is thanking people for doing Christ's work.
Exactly, but
in helping support Obamacare, helping him get elected and Obamacare.
Helping him get reelected. And then the First Lady, just this week on March 6th, the First Lady told a group of organizers who were helping with promotion of Obamacare, she said, quote, "You're changing lives. You realize that. Keep it up," she said, affectionately squeezing Counselor Suzanne Diogenes' shoulder. She says, "These places are not easy places to run, but you are doing God's work." So re-electing Obama is doing God's work. Pushing through Obama's agenda, Obamacare is doing God's work. Now, do you think they might be saying in an indirect way, equating Obama with God?
Okay, but
because that's what it feels like to me.
Is taking over a sixth of the nation's economy and destroying health care as we know it, that's considered God's work?
Apparently, it seems like it doesn't it feel like, though, that they are trying to equate Barack Obama as God?
Well, I guess I can just remember his speech at Chicago's Hyde Park. And Douglas Brinkley, the presidential historian, and Tom Brokaw was opining. And they were talking about how Obama's family was up towards the pulpit. And when Obama started to move towards the pulpit, it was almost that he was floating on air as he moved towards the speech podium, I guess I should say, while his family seemed to slowly fade to the background. And I can clearly remember Douglas Brinkley and Brokaw opining to each other, who is this we've just elected?
Yeah.
Now, this was part of the water-carrying media that was discarding all the accounts of Bill Ayers, Jeremiah Wright, all these things, was guilt by association. Oh, this guy's A-OK. He's got our stamp of approval. And then on the very night that he gets inducted into office, they look at each other and say, who's this we've just elected?
Exactly. And we really don't know.
It's almost like the guy dropped out of the sky.
Boy, I wonder. And I'm not saying that as someone who's trying to be a sensationalist or anything like that. I really do wonder.
Well, I would like to have somebody that actually...
We don't really know where he was born. We don't know anything about this guy's past other than he grew up in Indonesia.
I'd like to actually meet one of his classmates.
No one can find any.
There's
no one remembers him. How could you have amnesia when you have somebody who was in your class who ended up being the first black president of the United States? I would remember that.
Well, and continue with your story.
That's really the gist of it. I just wanted to try and provoke some thought out there with the listening audience. Who is this guy, Obama?
Well,
and what is it they're trying to say?
I think we're fixing to find out.
Look for more actions like that, and watch whatever happens with that peace deal that they try to get Netanyahu to sign.
You will soon find out with a series of executive orders what the man's all about. Because I don't think we've heard the last of his ink pen.
Absolutely.
Okay, I referenced before our break, I was going to talk about in the days of Noah. And I put a little thing on my Facebook post here the last week or two. As it was in the days of Noah, God the Son created paradise in Eden during that first week. 2 institutions were created. These were the Sabbath and marriage. An institution is an established law or custom, something that would endure the test of time. Antediluvian man forgot and tested the limits of both God's twins. Polygamy and the Sabbath, non-observance, were prominent reasons earth was destroyed by flood the first time. Antediluvian man was evil in all his thinking. Rights in that time were ignored. Your wife, your land, your property had no respect. Anything you had could and was taken by force most time, violence and bloodshed as a result. Now Christ said in Matthew, as it was in the days of Noah, today the same twin institutions are under assault again. Marriage is under assault from the same sex and polygamist advocates, and the Sabbath is all but ignored by most of Protestant faiths and was outright changed by the Church of Rome. And atheists, the fastest growing religion in the country, spits on with contempt for both. Jan Brewer of Arizona proved this to be true this past week. Eat, drink, marry, and give in marriage was the problem prior to Noah and will be the problem just prior to the Lord's return. Nothing wrong with eating, drinking, or marrying. The issue is, 1, excess, and 2, the perversion of the marriage institution. Before the flood, it was polygamy. Now it is Sodom sex marriage. Ever wonder why sodomy has its name? Well, again, the point of my program, read the blessed instruction book.
Well, that was part of the destruction, not just that, but the overall evil that was being perpetrated on the earth. But there was also another element to why the earth had to be destroyed at that point, and that goes into Genesis 6. When it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were fair, and they took wives of all which they chose. So the sons of God being not as Strong's Concordance says, which is the line of Seth. Yes. They're literally talking about angels from heaven rebelling, leaving their estate, coming down, taking wives, and polluting the genetic line.
Well, could it be, I've done a lot of thought on this, could it be that they weren't potentially having relations with men, but they were possessing men who were?
I think they were literally having relations, because it goes down, verse 4, Genesis 6, verse 4, there were giants in the earth in those days. So that leads to me, for me to believe that it was not just somebody being possessed, but it was actual physical manifestation, because you were causing something different, which was not created.
Well, actually, the atheists will go bonkers on this, because they say there's no way that the dinosaurs had to pre-exist man. But my point on the thing is that definitely that was either happening, or through man there was some tampering with the DNA genetic pool.
It was a combo.
It was a combo that was resulting in what I consider some of these Neanderthal, prehistoric men. And I don't think that people should find this such an alien concept, because Stalin, during World War II, had a program that he was trying to institute, that they were trying to mate primates and man, and in particular orangutan, because that was the closest genetic thing to humans, I believe. And he was either trying to mate humans with a female orangutan, or a the opposite.
Because God made everything in its own kind, and that's why you can't have those relations.
Or men with a female orangutan would be the opposite.
That's why those can't procreate. Now we have scientists that are actually trying to create them in labs, chimera, and this is something that's ongoing. You can go ahead and look this up, the genetic manipulation that's going on right now.
But the point of that story was why Stalin was wanting to do this was so that he could have a race of
monkey men.
Well, a race of military soldiers that could excel in strength to that of humans, eat a diet that would make a human die.
Right.
And would have superior strength and superior speed to human fighters. I liken these dinosaurs to, to what we would think now as tanks.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think.
It was Satan's design to be like the Most High.
Mm-hmm.
So if he was to be like the Most High, he had to have the ability to create, which he didn't have.
He does not have
so
that. He can only tamper.
This was his ability to try to create, and also these things were used for instruments of war.
I agree.
So when it says that man's thoughts were continually evil, this was part of what was going on, that things were just so spiraling out of control that God just had to...
Because they were so interbred with each other that they had this supernatural intelligence to them that was demonic in nature. And here's the key, I think, in verse 9 of Genesis 6 as to why the flood occurred and why Noah was spared. It says, these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man, so he's a good guy, and perfect in his generations. Doesn't mean he was sinless, but what that is trying to say is that his genetic code and the genetic code of his family had not been tampered with. That's why Noah and his family were spared. They were the last people on earth who were true human beings.
Well, and then his 3 sons after the flood was contaminated with that DNA that was prior to the flood. But it goes to the story of the Tower of Babel, where God wanted man to disperse amongst the earth so there wouldn't be all that congregated brain power to do that same thing again.
And for anybody who wants to read more about real-life giants, they've uncovered a whole lot of giant skulls and things like that. Go to Genesis 6 Giants.
So we'll be back here quickly with our final segment, Hypocrite of the Week, and I'll let David pick up on the point he was making when we come back.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places, especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart, and it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
And we're we're back, and we're going to have our segment here called Hypocrite of the Week. David actually was finished on his last point, and so my choice for Hypocrite of the Week pertains to my first story of Lois Lerner, and so my Hypocrite of the Week is all things MSNBC News. Yay! Lerner gets no coverage on their network.
No?
None. Nada. Zippo.
I'm shocked.
Now, they're spending way too much time focusing on Chris Christie.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with that as long as everybody gets held to the same standard. Hold Obama scandals to the same standard as Chris Christie's. But I find it just repugnant that they can't take time out of their busy news network to have any coverage of Lois Lerner taking the fifth, and then not only that, but then they say there's not a shred of evidence. There's not an iota of evidence that this ties the White House.
A smidgen.
But it brings me to my point. How do you know? Now, just one little quick thing in my Hypocrite of the Week. This is a little variation of it, but I also want to give a little bit of a hypocrite kudos to Bill O'Reilly.
Oh, wow.
Now Bill O'Reilly had a guest on, I believe it was Thursday night, on his first segment, and forgive me, I don't know the guest name, but it was a ski. So you can look it up.
One of my people.
But Bill wanted and challenged this guest to move the story forward. Don't relitigate it. Don't go over something we already know. Move the story forward. Mm-hmm. And I thought this guest done a good job at it. But at the end of it, he says to Bill, now, Bill, keep in mind that Bill has said that Obama has misled. He said that he's deceived. He said everything but the word liar. He said everything but liar. I don't know why, Bill. Maybe he's afraid he won't get another Super Bowl interview. What exactly his problem is. But
and Bill's in it
the
for
final
Bill.
Statement is that why did Obama use the word smidgen? There's not a smidgen of evidence. We have ongoing investigations going on, and we have the president trying to put his thumb on the scale of justice, signaling there's no smidgen.
Right.
Was he signaling, was he telling the news networks and the investigations what they're to find and what they're to be reported on?
I think he was trying to create a mental image in the mind of whoever heard that comment and downplay it and just create the impression that whatever it is that the scandal is about is so insignificant. It's just there's not a smidgen of evidence.
Yeah, well, so anyway, those will be my two votes, MSN, or as I often say, PMSNBC, and Bill O'Reilly is my choice for Hypocrite of the Week. And now your vote would be?
It was tough this week. It's another tough week. Chris Christie almost won.
Chris Christie's in the running.
For basically coming into CPAC and saying, hey, let's not elect someone too conservative. But I'm going to give the award to Hillary. Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, for comparing Vladimir Putin's actions in the Ukraine to Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany. She said, now, if this sounds familiar, it's what Hitler did back in the 30s, she said. All the Germans that were the ethnic Germans, the Germans by ancestry, who were in places like Czechoslovakia and Romania and other places, Hitler kept saying they're not being treated right. I must go and protect my people, and that's what's gotten everybody so nervous. So I just think it's kind of odd that she's comparing. I think actually comparisons to Hitler are valid. I think they're valid. When you have a leader who attacks nations without other provocations, it's a valid comparison. Who tries to set up wars on false pretenses, it's a valid comparison. Who's actively trying to disarm their population, I think it's a valid comparison. who's declared his absolute rule, regardless of the will of the public, basically dissolving parliaments, dissolving any type of representative voice. That's a valid comparison. Who is nationalizing healthcare, forcing his people onto a national plan. Who has sent government agencies out to persecute people who are opposed to his agenda, which has been done. I think that's a valid comparison. Who's orchestrated false flag events in order to further his political agenda. I think it's a valid comparison. Yes, these are all valid comparisons to Adolf Hitler. But these are not the actions of Vladimir Putin. These are the actions, of course, of our esteemed God President, Barack Obama.
Well, do you find I get a little uncomfortable because I've done it myself. I've made comparisons of abortion, euthanasia. I've made all kinds of comparisons on Facebook, and I get jumped on quite frequently. As most people, it's almost a taboo thing to compare anybody to Hitler because Hitler was such a unique character.
And people are of the mental persuasion that this could never happen again. Well, let me tell you something. Was Hitler was Germany a backwards country in the 1930s when Hitler came to power?
They were technologically advanced, far in advance of the United States. It took 2.5 years, in fact, for the United States to catch up to what the Germany war machine was.
Sure. So to say that it couldn't happen to an advanced people such as the United States, anybody who is jumping on you for making a comparison to Adolf Hitler has obviously not studied history. And that's why I listed all these things down as comparisons, because these are all things that both men have done, both Barack Obama and Adolf Hitler.
Now, does it seem to you that Democrats can get by with it a little easier than Republicans making these comparisons? Because George Bush was routinely compared to Hitler.
Well, George W. Bush had his Reichstag moment in 9/11, as far as I'm concerned. So I'd say that the comparisons were valid at that point. But as I said last week, Barack Obama is likened to the closing pitcher in a baseball game. He's coming in to get those final 3 outs in the bottom of the 9th, protect that globalist lead, and shut the door.
He is the Sandman, Mariano Rivera?
Yeah. No, seriously, I would say so. I do.
Can we hear the music cranking up in Yankee Stadium in the Sandman?
I would say that it's a valid comparison right there.
Now, you also had, and I don't have one this week, a kudos of the week, and this would be a sane-speaking liberal. But you have
it's not a sane-speaking liberal per se. It's just.
But you have a kudos of the week to some sane-speaking person.
Well, I'd like to commend the House of Representatives for once. The House of Representatives passed legislation on Wednesday afternoon to make the fine/tax for violating Obama's individual mandate $0 for this year. And it did so by the wide margin of 90 votes, 250 to 160. So that's 83 more votes than the 7-vote margin by which Obamacare passed in the House of Representatives 4 years ago. And 27 Democrats actually voted for that legislation. So congratulations, House of Representatives, for a sane move. Now, let's just repeal Obamacare. Nobody wants it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Well, isn't it funny how when Ted Cruz supposedly got blamed for shutting down the government, we just couldn't possibly put any of those things on waivers? And how many waivers has he had since the government shut down?
No lie.
Okay, that's our show today. And this has been Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and your studio guest, David Kanyuk. We shall see you again next week.